PT the Vibe podcast. Coming up to another episode. I'm using some of my background in law enforcement to talk about this Gabby Petito thing. I kind of spoke about it when it actually happened, but now they've kind of it's been talked about a lot more lately. Um, it's crazy because they say that TikTok was huge or social media was huge in them finding her remains, um, which is crazy. I mean, the ability for people to have this type of stuff at their fingertips, people hate it because you can get information, and people are like, I don't know how to decipher what's good and what's not, but it's the flow of information is the flow of information no matter what. You get certain information from the news outlets, you get certain information from, um, I mean, even local news compared to national news are two different flows of information, right? And so you got to think about the flows of information and how they're utilized to be able to get people to view things and see things right a certain way. And that's essentially what happens when we talk about the flow of information. So her story essentially is she goes on a road trip in a van with Brian Laundrie, who's her boyfriend. Um, they have an encounter with law enforcement, and we'll talk about that encounter in depth. And I'll kind of tell you guys what I think, what should have happened, what could have happened, um, that could have changed, maybe changed the result a little bit. And then we'll talk about abuse, like abuse, any kind of mental abuse that becomes physical, um, and then the escalation of abuse over time. We'll talk about that too. So essentially, they were up near Teton County National Park area. So they're just touring. She's a blogger. She gets online and talks about trips and takes trips, and that's kind of her thing. And so that's what they did. They got in a van and they're like, we're gonna scoot on out of here and go take ourselves a trip. Um, Family didn't hear from her September 11th. Um, there were some worries. There were some concerns because nobody heard from her, and so they're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on. Um, they were in Utah last they knew, so they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then Brian actually came back without his fiance. He went back to Florida without his fiance, and so they're trying to figure out, okay, why would you go back without her? Like, what the heck is wrong with this dude? Which I think that's weird in and of itself. Like, I don't know that I would ever eh, come back with it. Like, what? But it is what it is. That's what he did. Um, Hold on. Yeah, so that's what he did. He ended up going back to Florida. The van was back. And the thing is, when he got back, the weird thing is when he got back, he lawyered up, so he didn't talk to nobody. Law enforcement had some questions. They're like, "Dude, we gotta, where is she? Like, how do you come back without your fiance? What kind of dude are you?" They ended up finding some body cam footage of a police interaction. Police were called out, and that's in Grant County. Um, and so they come out because there's a caller that says that there's a dude that's hitting a female. Um, PD ends up finding the van, the white van that they were in. Um, Van curbs it, so it's weird. That's weird behavior number one. He curbs it. Looks like he kind of hops up on the curb, and they play the interaction. So I'm watching the interaction, and I'm like, she's crying, and he's trying to answer questions for her. Something's obviously off. So they did a good thing. Law enforcement did a good thing. They split them up. She comes to the back by the police car so he can have a conversation with her there. And then the other guy's talking to Brian over by the van. And so what we find out through her, what she said, because he's trying to make it seem like nothing happened. So what she's saying is that he, they were verbal. There's a verbal argument. He was upset about something she did. She was sorry because she was causing him to be distracted. She said sorry multiple times, which is weird. Um, Typical of somebody who's being mentally abused. So she says, she's saying sorry multiple times. She's like, I apologize that I put us in a situation where you guys had to be called out. She said that he has injuries to him, and then she says that he puts his hand on her face like this. So he putting his hand on her. She's got a little bit of a mark on her cheek. So obviously he's here. That's close to this. I mean, you slide down a little bit and then you end up strangulation. Um, Now, what baffles me, now I know state laws are different in different states and ordinances and Sedgwick County and counties and all that. I said Sedgwick County because where I live at, but counties have different laws. So here in Kansas, it's state law. They've established a domestic relationship. They're together. Now you've got bodily injury. So there's bodily injury to both. Can you determine a primary aggressor. Not necessarily because they got pretty similar injuries, and so you run into the problem now where it's like, well, I can't establish that, so like, what do I do? Me in that situation, coming from a law enforcement background, prior law enforcement, that I still try to figure out, is there a way for us to split them up? There has to be a way for us, because at the end of the day, that's the goal. That's the reason why we do that here in Kansas. You split them up because sometimes you just need a little bit of time to get away from the situation so things can calm down. Because if you stay there, things will escalate, and the next thing you know, somebody ends up hurt severely or killed. And so I would still be trying to figure out, okay, how do we get them split up? Contact the parents, contact her parents, contact his parents. Hey guys, we got this issue up here. Like, is there something that we can do? And I think what these officers kind of messed up on is they had the opportunity to intervene, right? There's an intervention because just because there's minor injuries don't mean it won't soon become severe injuries down the road. And I don't think that officers think like that nowadays. They're just like so here in the moment that they forget that things do escalate. People do get more mad. People do get pissed off more as you like keep going on. And so that's what they do. And so they end up letting them go. They end up letting them go. Obviously, I assume they pulled a case. I didn't see anything anywhere that said they did. I would assume. I mean, anytime I showed up on a domestic violence, even if it's just they were arguing with each other, I still made a case on it because you got to have some paper trail just to prove you were there during this date and time, and this is what you encountered. That way, if you had to come back out there, it's like, dude, man, Thompson just made this case because these dudes were over here acting a fool, and so you get that, right? And so I think that that piece is huge in this, in essence, because you got to think having that paper trail is huge, is good. But I'm disappointed that law enforcement didn't do more in this situation because I mean, we know the outcome now, and even armchair quarterback in hindsight's 2020. Like we know the outcome now, so it's like, dang, I wish they would have done more. But me in that situation, period, coming from my experience, I would have still tried to do more just because it's like something's off. Like sometimes you just get the gut feeling that something's off, and I learned very early on in the career that you have to trust your gut. If your gut because my gut would tell me stuff was off and I would second guess myself. And so I learned at an early age you got to trust it. You have to absolutely 100% trust it. So my question was, why didn't law enforcement do anything? They had the opportunity that you could have split them up. Even if you just take dude to jail or her to jail, even if you just took her to jail overnight, right? Because I guarantee you, she goes to jail. Her parents is like, hey, I'm finna come pick her up. Like that's a red flag to the parents. Like, hey, if I find out my daughter is cross country, she could be halfway cross country, and she went to jail on some DV stuff. They was fighting each other. I'm on the next flight out. We come to get her. He's not gonna pick my daughter up. I'm going to come and pick my daughter up my damn self. That's what could have transpired. And it might have sucked for her. She might have been pissed off, but she'd probably still be alive, right? And she might have tried to plead with her parents, but my daughter ain't plead with me. Like if you was just in a battle with this dude, I'm not gonna let you drive back halfway across country with the same dude. Like it's not gonna happen, right? If you beat him up more than he beat you up, and you went to jail, because typically that's how it go. You beat him up more than he beat you up, you went to jail. Best believe I'm coming. I'm daddy's gonna come get you. I'm gonna bring you home with me. I don't trust that dude. Like I don't, because who knows? You get back with him, and y'all driving back. Now he didn't. Now he pissed off because you beat him up. Now he beating you up more, right? Those are things that are on my mind that I'm thinking because I got daughters, so I understand like the protection that is in place in my mind. Like I'm thinking, man, what if my daughter was like halfway across the country, she got arrested on some DV battery type stuff. She battered her dude. First of all, I'm like, what you batter him for, baby? And all he was talking shit. All right, cool, you battered him, whatever. We finna go. We riding out. I will go from New York to California to pick my daughter up if I have to do that in this given situation. Because I guarantee she would have reached out. She'd have reached out to her parents because who gonna pay her bond to get her out? Like we don't know, but she probably would have reached out. Her parents would have been notified, right? She would have probably contacted her parents, say, "Hey, this is what happened. Hey, I'm in jail." Because I wouldn't trust Brian with the grandson, and we don't know how much money they had if they had enough money to be able to get her out or whatever. And who knows? He might have just left her. We don't know what he was going on in his mind either. So there was an opportunity to split them up and maybe change the outcome of the events, but they didn't take it. They didn't take it. They focus on his injuries too much. I wrote that down in my notes. I'm like, dude, he had what could be considered defense injuries, like little scratch marks on his hand. Like if you got somebody on the face and they're trying to get your hand off, like obviously they're gonna scratch you, right? So I would assume, like to me, if she was punching him or scratching the heck out of him, you got those long scratch marks. But if it's like little ticks, that I'm trying to get your hand, like you got. I mean, that's what I'm thinking in my mind as they're talking. Um, and so I mean, honestly, hindsight's 2020. That's the hardest part about all this is being able to separate what you know from the whole case being solved and being done. Well, not necessarily being solved, but being done compared to what you have on paper. And I think that's the hardest part for me is like being able to like separate the two. It's hard, um, but I try my best. And so essentially, what happens is some days go by, search crew comes out, they find her remains. Um, they press the Laundry family, hey guys, we need some answers because you was the last one to see her alive, so you must know something that's up. Because the way that they found her remains, it was neatly put together. I mean, she's got a blanket over her, so it was obviously a stage scene. Like, it's like whoever did it knew what they was doing. Like they was trying to. It wasn't a oh damn she fell and I just left her there type of scenario, or she got succumbed to the elements. Like she was clearly murdered and then left there, right? So that I mean, in law enforcement felt like the area was staged. When the FBI got involved and the search teams got involved, they found her. And some reporters from News Nation were huge on this. You know, they found her, and so they were able to discern that based on evidence that this looked staged, man. This looked like somebody set this up. So they found her remains, and the coroner through an autopsy said strangulation. So that's crazy. Now we're talking from this now to move to this, right? And think about the things that could have been done between point A of law enforcement getting involved to where she actually ended up deceased. Law enforcement had the opportunity to really step in and intervene here, but they didn't take that. Social media was huge in helping kind of solve the case, um, which I think is huge, huge. But they ended up finding Brian. He's deceased, parent gunshot wound to himself. He took his own life. Had a journal, and he was talking about how he basically confessed to the crime. Essentially, she hurt herself, and he took her out of her misery. Weird. I don't know why you would take some. I don't. You don't take a human out of their misery. Like just something you do to like an animal. If an animal, like you got a deer that obviously is incapacitated, never going to be able to move again, then yeah, that's something that you do. But you don't think about that when you're talking about another human being. So for him to even say that in his little diary, little handbook that he wrote, crazy. But he essentially takes so he takes responsibility. I mean, he take responsibility for it? Kinda. I mean, he took his own life, so he didn't even allow the justice system to work. But that's guilt, man. That's what guilt will do to you. When you hold on and harbor so much guilt for a long period of time, sometimes it can put you in a situation where you take your own life, right? And that's what he did. He took his own life, and um, they were able to get some answers, get some closure as to what happened. I mean, we all kind of knew it was probably this dude probably did something to her. Like it was pretty obvious that this dude probably had something to do with her disappearance or death. And so, I mean, it's a battle, it's a fight, and it's one of those things where um, pay attention to your friends. Like I always say, whenever I talk about stuff on here, and I got a book coming out about it's called Trauma Bond. It's about trauma bonds, and it's kind of talks about how they form. How bad they can get, the outcomes, and it also kind of goes through and give the guidance of like how you end up, the type of people that end up getting trauma because there's a conglomerate of people that have issues that are unresolved that end up in trauma bonds. Right. That's not to say that they're bad people. They're genuinely good people, but there's some unresolved issues. There's everybody has an emptiness in them. There's some hole or void that needs to be filled. Everybody cup got a hole in it and it's dripping some water. Like there's nobody's cup that's completely perfect and intact. There's no water coming out. There's no such thing. That doesn't happen. And so my thing in the book, and it'll be coming out this summer, is my goal as I still continue to write it, um, is that to get people to understand that these are things that we need to be talking about as a community. These are things that we need to be talking about as people. You need to be talking to your friends. You need to be talking to your daughters. You need to be talking to your sons about this type of stuff because this stuff 100% happens and it has this effect. Gabby Petito is the victim of this type of effect. You know, she loves him so much, but the love that she has may not be healthy for him or for her. It may not be the healthy type of love. She might be just attached. She may have such an attachment to him that he does things to her, and she just allows it. And that's the hard part. That's the balance. That's the thing that you got to figure out. How do I combat that? And it's typically something inside the person that's a void that needs to be filled, um, that hasn't been filled yet. And so, with that being said, though, please like, subscribe, and share the channel. We're gonna keep pushing. Again, this is I'm gonna try to do this every now and again, where I kind of like go over some crime stuff, because obviously I got a background in law enforcement, so I've dealt with crime. I know what crime looks like. I know how to solve cases. I can tell from people if they're lying or if they're giving false information. Like, I mean, you get all these things, and so I understand that. And so I kind of use that and like break these things down and try to make, I try to break them down into to elementary school where you can understand them to the normal human being. That's my goal. It's G2 Podcast. Please like, subscribe, and share.